Let me tell you, I've been through some messy situations. I've been in a 2-hour queue for a concert ticket that sold out the minute I got to the window. I once ate half a questionable street hot dog before realizing the vendor was wearing one glove. But nothing, absolutely nothing, gave me that gut-sinking, cold sweat, heart-pounding panic like the 2 seconds it took for my finger to click on that email. It was late, like 1:30 a.m. late. I was still logged into my work laptop, trying to wrap up a project that should have been done 5 hours ago. I was running on pure caffeine and the vague promise of a decent night's sleep, which, let's be honest, never happens. My brain was mush. I'm talking, can't remember my own middle name, mush. I just wanted to shut the thing down and collapse. But before I did, I noticed a tiny little notification pop up in the corner of my screen, a new email. It had a weird, long subject line that started with confidential Q4 restructuring draft Henderson/OPRTL, and it looked like it was from our company's VP of operations, a guy named Mr. Thorne. Now, here's the crucial, brain-dead mistake I made. Instead of just closing it, I meant to click on the next unread email, which was a stupid memo about mandatory fire safety training. My cursor was hovering near the confidential one, and my hand was shaking from exhaustion. One accidental twitch. The email opened. I was immediately hit with that feeling of knowing you've walked into a room you absolutely shouldn't be in. The first line of the body text was a standard, dry greeting, but then it got straight to the point. It was a bulleted list, titled Phase 1 Personnel Reductions. My eyes scanned down, half reading the corporate jargon about optimizing efficiency and streamlining resources, but my attention snagged on the names. They weren't listed by their full names, just internal code names and initials, but I recognized the structure of the list. It was our team, the marketing tech department. There was a section labeled Tech 004, which I knew was Sarah from Data Analytics. Tech 011 was Mark in Creative. And then I saw it about 2/3 of the way down. My own internal code. Tech 009. My stomach dropped like I just stepped off a cliff. Everything else in the room, the dim glow of my desk lamp, the quiet hum of the laptop fan, just faded into a silent roar. I was going to be fired. Not just Sarah or Mark or whoever else, but me. The word layoff felt clinical, cold, and brutal. I sat there, frozen, staring at the screen, heart hammering against my ribs, convinced that the VP of operations had a real-time notification that I, a lowly junior developer, was reading his top-secret document. I scrolled down frantically, needing more context, needing it to be a mistake, a draft from last year, anything but real. That's when I saw the part that didn't just scare me, it shattered me. Under the main list of people to be let go, there was a small, italicized paragraph that stood out because it was less formal, almost like a personal note. It read, confirming final details with AC tonight at 2 a.m. for internal consistency review. He's been invaluable in identifying key redundancies and providing on-the-ground support for the rationale. This wouldn't be possible without him. AC. Alex Chin. My best friend. My cubemate. The person I told everything to, from the awful date I had last Tuesday to my deepest anxieties about job security. The person whose desk was literally 3 feet from mine. The person I shared lunch with almost every day for the last 4 years. Alex was helping them identify who to fire. Alex was apparently invaluable in this brutal, confidential plan. My hands started shaking violently. This wasn't just a work drama, this was a personal nuclear fallout. The thought that Alex knew this was happening, that Alex was actively participating in a plan that included firing me, Mark, Sarah, and potentially half our friends, while pretending everything was normal. It was a betrayal so deep, so unexpected, that it felt like a physical punch to the chest. I slammed the laptop shut, not gently but with a panic-fueled, adrenaline-laced thud, and just leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. The silence of the apartment felt deafening. The digital words were gone, but the feeling, the hot, sickening mix of fear and sheer, blinding rage, was immediate and overwhelming. How was I going to face him tomorrow? How was I supposed to pretend like I didn't know? And more importantly, how could my best friend do this to me? I knew I had to act and fast, but the idea of confronting Alex, of putting a 4-year friendship on the line for something I saw in an email I wasn't supposed to see, made my whole body ache. If you're watching this, I want you to drop a comment right now, telling me where you are and what time it is. I need to know people are out there, because in that moment, I felt completely, horrifyingly alone. So, to give you some context for why this email was such a gut punch, let me tell you a bit about my life before everything went sideways. I work as a junior developer at a mid-sized tech company called Innovate Solutions. Yeah, I know, super original name. We basically build custom software solutions for other businesses, mostly in the finance and healthcare sectors. Think less cool app you use every day, and more complex, secure back-end systems nobody ever sees but everyone relies on. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills, and for the most part, I actually enjoyed the work. I'd been there for 4 years. Fresh out of college, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and convinced I was going to change the world one line of code at a time. The reality was a lot more spreadsheets and debugging obscure errors at 3 a.m. Still, it was a good place to learn. The office itself was pretty standard for a tech company: open plan, lots of glass walls, standing desks, a few beanbag chairs nobody ever actually used, and an endless supply of lukewarm coffee that tasted vaguely of regret. We even had one of those wellness rooms that was basically a closet with a yoga mat that smelled faintly of feet. Closet. My manager was a guy named Mr. Henderson. He was fine. Not a monster, not a mentor, just perpetually stressed. He was one of those managers who communicated almost exclusively through passive-aggressive emails and whose facial expression usually hovered somewhere between mild confusion and just smelled something bad. He managed our team, the marketing tech department, which was a bit of a misnomer. We did more than just marketing. We developed the internal tools that our marketing team used. So, while the flashy campaigns were out there, we were the ones behind the scenes making sure the databases talked to each other and the dashboards actually displayed data. It was often thankless work, but there was a quiet satisfaction in seeing a complex system finally click into place. The tech industry, as you might know, is a bit of a roller coaster. One minute everyone's getting stock options and free kombucha, the next minute you're hearing whispers of restructuring and optimizing human capital, which, let's be real, is just corporate speak for layoffs. Innovate Solutions had been riding a pretty good wave for a few years, expanding into new markets, hiring aggressively. But lately there had been a shift. The vibe in the office had changed. The free kombucha started disappearing. Then the fancy espresso machine broke and didn't get fixed for weeks. Small things, but they add up. There were fewer impromptu happy hours, more hushed conversations in the break room. The company newsletters, which used to be all about celebrating our successes, started featuring articles like Navigating Economic Headwinds and The Importance of Adaptability in a Dynamic Market. Classic red flags, right? You hear those phrases and your spidey senses start tingling. I tried not to let it get to me too much. I mean, everyone talked about it, but it always felt like something that happened to other departments or other companies. Not us. Not my team. We were crucial, weren't we? We built the stuff that kept the lights on, digitally speaking. Plus, I had my job security shield, Alex. See, Alex and I had a pact. A verbal, unspoken pact, but a pact nonetheless. We were the dynamic duo of marketing tech. We'd survive anything together. If one of us heard anything, we'd tell the other. If one of us was on the chopping block, we'd fight for the other. It was just how we operated. We were an inseparable unit, navigating the corporate labyrinth side by side. Our cubicles were adjacent, so we literally spent 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, a mere 3 feet apart. Our screens were often mirrored, debugging each other's code, or more often, distracting each other with funny memes. We knew each other's coffee orders by heart, could finish each other's sentences, and had an arsenal of inside jokes that would make absolutely no sense to anyone else. It was more than just a work friendship, it was a genuine bond. He knew my deepest fears about failing in my career, and I knew his anxieties about his student loans. We were each other's anchors in the often turbulent waters of corporate life. So, when I saw my code name on that list, the initial shock was purely selfish. But then, when I saw Alex's initials linked to the plan itself, that's when the world tilted on its axis. It wasn't just my job, it was my entire understanding of loyalty, friendship, and trust that was crumbling around me. Everything I thought I knew about Innovate Solutions, and more importantly, about Alex, was suddenly called into question. The stability, the camaraderie, the shared struggle, all of it felt like a carefully constructed illusion. I mean, imagine finding out your ride or die, the person who always had your back, was secretly conspiring against you. It's not just betrayal, it's a redefinition of your reality. And that, my friends, is where this whole nightmare truly began. The quiet hum of the office, the lukewarm coffee, the perpetually stressed manager, they were just the backdrop to a much darker, much more personal drama that was about to unfold. Alex Chin, my work best friend. It's hard to describe our relationship without sounding cliché, but honestly, we were closer than most siblings. We met on my first day 4 years ago. I was awkwardly trying to figure out how to work the fancy coffee machine, the one that eventually broke and was never replaced, remember? And Alex, already a seasoned vet of 6 months, sauntered over and said, "Don't touch the espresso button. It starts a minor flood. Just stick to the instant hot water and pretend it's tea." That was our introduction, commiseration over the terrible office amenities. We clicked instantly. We had the same dark sense of humor about corporate life, a shared love for terrible 80s action movies, and, crucially, the same work ethic. We were both the kind of people who, when handed a ridiculously tight deadline, would first complain loudly for 5 minutes, then buckle down and actually deliver something amazing. We complemented each other perfectly. I was better at the big-picture architecture, and Alex was a genius at tracking down the most obscure, fiddly bugs in the code. He was the detail guy. I was the framework guy. Our friendship wasn't confined to the office, either. We spent almost every Thursday night at a greasy, loud wings place near his apartment, dissecting the week's absurdities. We knew each other's families. I'd been to his sister's wedding, and he was the one who helped me move my sad, oversized sofa into my current apartment. We had a history, a shared narrative built on countless inside jokes, late-night coding sessions, and mutual support. I trusted him implicitly. If I told him a secret, it was buried forever. If I needed help, he was there, no questions asked. This closeness was particularly important in the tense, ever-shifting environment of Innovate Solutions. When the company started getting shaky a few months ago, Alex and I became even tighter. We'd have those hushed conversations in the stairwell, trying to read the tea leaves. "Did you see the VP's face in the all-hands meeting?" he'd whisper. "He looks like he's calculating how many of us he can replace with an Excel formula." We shared the anxiety, and that shared anxiety was a form of comfort. It was us against the world, or at least, us against the terrifying inevitability of a corporate downsizing. He was my barometer. If Alex was stressed, I knew I should be stressed. If he was calm, I felt like everything would be okay. He was the one who encouraged me to apply for the promotion I was too scared to go for. I didn't get it, but still. He was the one who covered for me that one time I got food poisoning and spent 2 days horizontal. We had a bond sealed by the trenches of the corporate world. So, when I saw AC in that confidential email, right next to the list of people to be fired, described as invaluable in identifying key redundancies and providing on-the-ground support, it wasn't just a revelation, it was a seismic shock that rewrote 4 years of history in an instant. My mind raced back over every moment we'd shared in the past few weeks. Did he know then? Was he already working on this? Had he been smiling at me over our takeout noodles, knowing that he was simultaneously compiling a list that included my name? The sheer, icy calculation of that possibility made me feel physically ill. I remembered a conversation from just last week. I was complaining about a terrible meeting with Mr. Henderson, saying how useless the whole project felt, and Alex had just listened, nodding thoughtfully. "Yeah, I get it, man," he'd said, "but just keep your head down for a bit, okay? Things are going to be changing around here soon, and you want to be seen as reliable." At the time, I thought he was just being a good friend, giving solid, cautious advice. Now, it sounded like a cryptic warning from an accomplice. The deep emotional connection we had made the betrayal exponentially worse. If this was true, Alex wasn't just a collaborator, he was a spy. He had access to my worries, my professional insecurities, my frustrations with the team, and he was potentially feeding that information up the chain to justify my termination. It was a weaponization of our friendship. The reality of facing him the next day was terrifying. How do you look your best friend in the eye, the person you trust most in the world, knowing that you saw evidence that they are actively working to get you fired? The whole foundation of our relationship, the shared history, the inside jokes, the Thursday night wings, it all felt cheapened, twisted, and fake. It felt like I had been living a lie for 4 years, and I was the only one who didn't know the script. The email didn't just expose a layoff plan, it exposed a fundamental flaw in my judgment and a deep, painful rift in the one thing that made my exhausting job bearable. Looking back, the signs were there. I just didn't want to see them. My brain, bless its naive little heart, was so committed to the narrative of Alex is my friend, Alex is loyal, that it filtered out anything that contradicted it. But after seeing that email, every strange little moment from the past few weeks suddenly snapped into sharp, painful focus. These were the first red flags that I had completely missed because I was so deep in denial. The first thing that started happening was the shift in his schedule. Alex used to be a creature of habit. He'd get in at 8:45 a.m., grab his 2 lukewarm cups of coffee, the ones that tasted like regret, remember? And be at his desk by 9 a.m. sharp. He was meticulously punctual. But about a month ago, he started coming in late, like really late. Not just 10 minutes, sometimes an hour or more. When I asked him where he'd been, he'd just be vague. Oh, running some personal errands, or just had a thing to deal with. He'd brush it off with a quick, forced smile and immediately bury himself in his screen, avoiding eye contact. If I pressed, he'd get visibly agitated, something Alex never did. Then there were the closed-door meetings. Our office was open plan, remember, with all those glass walls. The only real private spaces were the conference rooms. Alex, who usually avoided meetings like the plague, started having these weird, short, frequent sessions. They were always with Mr. Henderson, our stressed-out manager, and sometimes, even more unusually, with the VP of Operations, Mr. Thorne, the guy who actually sent the email I saw. These meetings were never on the shared team calendar. I'd just look up from my code and see Alex hustling down the hall, clutching a notebook, with that focused, serious expression he usually reserved for debugging the company's main server. When I try to joke about it later, like, ooh, secret meetings, Alex, are you becoming the new company spy? He would laugh, but it was a little too quick, a little too hollow. He'd say they were about high-level strategic alignment or some other piece of corporate fluff, but he never offered details and he never, ever shared any outcomes. For a guy who told me everything, the sudden secrecy felt like a wall had gone up between our desks. One incident in particular now chills me to the bone. It happened maybe 2 weeks before I saw the email. We were in the break room, and Mark from Creative was venting about a ridiculous request from the VP of Marketing. Mark was pretty loud, complaining that the request was a waste of resources and time. Alex was standing next to me, pouring a glass of water, and he did something I had never seen him do. He shut Mark down instantly. "Hey, Mark," Alex said, his voice surprisingly firm and low, "maybe just dial it back. You don't know all the moving pieces. Sometimes you just have to trust that the higher-ups know what they're doing." Mark and I just stared at him. Alex, the anti-establishment rebel, telling us to trust the higher-ups? It was so out of character. Alex just cleared his throat, finished his water, and quickly left the room. At the time, I thought he was just having a bad day. Now, I realize he was protecting the very people he was secretly consulting for. He had insider knowledge, and he was trying to cool the jets of anyone who was making too much noise or rocking the boat. The most unnerving red flag, though, was the distance. Alex had always been my sounding board. We'd troubleshoot code together, we'd critique the latest management memo, we'd swap stories about weekend disasters. But lately, he'd been completely checked out. If I went over to his desk to ask a quick question, he'd keep his headphones on or give me these terse, one-word answers. It felt like he was constantly guarded. Our usual rhythm, that seamless back and forth, was gone, replaced by an awkward silence punctuated only by the clicking of our keyboards. I had tried to address it. "Hey man, everything okay?" I'd asked him one Friday afternoon, noticing he hadn't laughed at a single one of my highly rated jokes all week. He just sighed, rubbed the back of his neck, and said, "Yeah, just a lot of pressure from above. Big projects, high stakes. You know how it is." I did know how it was, but this felt different. This wasn't project pressure. This felt like personal withdrawal. I'd chalked it up to stress, thinking maybe he was just burnt out. The irony is excruciating. He was stressed, but not because of a coding deadline. He was stressed because he was sitting on a devastating secret that involved me and our entire team. He was living a double life, and the strain of maintaining that lie was what I was misinterpreting as professional stress. These subtle shifts, the lateness, the secret meetings, the odd behavior, the emotional distance, weren't just signs of a friend under pressure. They were the slow, steady drumbeat of a betrayal in progress. And now, thanks to one accidental, late-night click, I was finally hearing the music. The music of a meticulously organized corporate purge, with my best friend as the conductor's assistant. I didn't sleep that night. Not a wink. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that subject line flashing behind my eyelids. Confidential, Q4 restructuring draft. The sheer scale of the situation hit me hardest the next morning. I wasn't just facing a personal betrayal. I was holding a dangerous, top-secret document that could destroy my career if discovered and ruin several other people's lives if I chose to ignore it. My immediate, overwhelming panic was about decoding that firing list. I couldn't just march into the office and ask Mr. Henderson, "Hey, am I Tech 009? That would be a guaranteed, immediate one-way ticket to HR and an empty cardboard box. I had to be subtle, a spy in my own cubicle farm, trying to decipher the corporate cryptography. The email had used a consistent naming structure, MTechXXX, where the numbers seemed to correspond roughly to employee IDs or internal tracking codes. My ID, which I'd seen on payslips and internal systems, ended in 009. That's why my heart seized when I saw Tech 009. But I needed confirmation for the others. My plan was risky, bordering on insane, but I was running on pure adrenaline and a sense of protective dread. My first target was Sarah, Tech 004. Sarah was the data analyst on our team, and she often left her internal reports lying around her desk, bless her chaotic soul. Before anyone else arrived, I got in extra early, jittery and tense. I casually walked past her desk, pretending to look for a specific folder. I spotted her most recent budget report, and right there in the header was her unique departmental tracking ID, MT004. Close enough. The A was likely for analyst, and my 009 was likely D4 developer. My code was real. Sarah was on the list. The next person, Mark Tech 011, was harder. He was a creative type, very private. But I remembered an ancient, shared project drive we used years ago. I logged in, digging deep into the archives, looking for old project initiation forms. Sure enough, in the metadata of an obscure creative brief he had submitted, there was his unique identifier, MTC011. Mark was also on the list. It was like reading an obituary for people who were still alive. My hands were shaking so much I almost dropped my lukewarm, regret-flavored coffee. This wasn't a draft. This was real. These were people I joked with, had lunch with, and occasionally commiserated with about Mr. Henderson's passive-aggressive email style. Half a dozen names, half our team, were marked for termination, including my two closest colleagues besides Alex, and, most painfully, the rest of the morning was a blur of forced normalcy. I sat at my desk, my stomach in knots, trying to look busy coding while my mind was screaming. Every time someone walked past my cube, I tensed up, terrified they were coming to call me into a closed-door meeting. Every click of an email notification sounded like a death knell. Then Alex arrived. He walked in late as usual, tossing a casual, "Morning, sunshine," over the divider. It felt like a knife twist. He looked totally normal, maybe a little more tired than usual, but otherwise the same goofy, slightly disorganized Alex. He dropped his bag, pulled out his laptop, and the betrayal became physically manifest. I watched him, pretending to study my monitor. He wasn't acting like a man about to deliver bad news. He was acting like a man who just had a normal Tuesday. This duality was sickening. Was he a master actor? Or was he so emotionally detached from the consequences that he genuinely didn't care? I had to test the waters. I walked over to the shared kitchen area where Alex was trying and failing to fix the espresso machine. "Hey, heard anything weird lately?" I tried, keeping my voice light. "The vibe is super off. I'm starting to think about updating my resume." Alex didn't even look at me. He was fiddling with the steamer wand. "Namit, you know how it is. We always have these cycles. Just power through. Everything will settle down in a couple of weeks." "A couple of weeks?" I repeated, my tone slightly sharper than I intended. "Why a couple of weeks? Did you hear something specific?" He finally pulled his head out from under the machine, giving me that practiced, slightly strained smile. "No, nothing specific. Just a feeling. Experience. You know." He was lying. The email explicitly mentioned the restructuring announcement happening in 2 weeks. He had just parroted a detail from the confidential plan, disguising it as an experienced guess. I nodded slowly, forcing a casual shrug, but inside, I was shaking. The casual cruelty of his deception was breathtaking. He wasn't just involved. He was actively, smoothly covering his tracks, right to my face. I walked back to my desk, the gravity of the situation crushing me. I had confirmation. The list was real, I was on it, and Alex was the inside man. The next, infinitely more complicated phase was deciding what to do with this ticking time bomb. The confirmation was agonizing. Mark, Sarah, me, all of us marked for redundancy. And Alex, my friend, was the mole. But now that the initial shock and panic had subsided a little, a new, agonizing layer of conflict emerged, the moral dilemma. What was I supposed to do with this information? My immediate, gut instinct was to warn my friends. Tell Mark, tell Sarah, tell everyone else whose code I had deciphered. Give them a head start. Tell them to clean out their desks digitally, update their resumes, and start looking for new jobs now, before the axe fell in 2 weeks. That felt like the right, loyal thing to do, the opposite of what Alex had done. It felt like being a decent human being. But then reality slapped me in the face with a wet fish of corporate fear. If I warned them, I was putting my own neck on the line. I didn't just see the email, I stole it, in a sense. It was confidential, not meant for me. If anyone started suddenly quitting or applying for new jobs en masse, Mr. Henderson and Mr. Thorne would instantly know that the plan had been leaked. And they would track the leak. My accidental click happened at 1:30 a.m. on a Friday night, from my unique IP address, logged into my unique work account. It would take IT maybe 30 seconds to pinpoint me as the source. If I acted like a whistleblower, I wouldn't just be fired, I'd be terminated with cause, maybe even legally penalized for accessing confidential company data. Goodbye severance package. Hello black mark on my professional record. I'd be sacrificing my financial and professional stability to save a few colleagues who, in the end, would probably have found new jobs eventually anyway. The stakes felt enormous and terrifyingly personal. So, the dilemma was brutal. Protect myself and keep silent, or protect my colleagues and risk everything. I tried to rationalize staying silent. Maybe they're not being fired, just reassigned. No, the bullet points used words like elimination and phase termination. Maybe Alex's involvement means they'll get generous severance. I immediately dismissed that. Alex was helping them cut costs, not be generous. The thought of keeping silent made me feel sick. I pictured Mark, happily designing a new logo, totally oblivious that his livelihood was about to be yanked out from under him. I pictured Sarah, diligently crunching numbers, completely unaware that those numbers were being used to justify her firing. Could I really sit next to Alex for 2 more weeks, acting like nothing was wrong, while watching our friends walk toward a trap? It felt like complicity. I tried a middle ground, warned them anonymously. But how? An anonymous email? That was clumsy and could still be traced. A burner phone text? Too dramatic, too movie-like, and still potentially risky. Besides, an anonymous warning would only spark panic without giving them the concrete evidence they needed to actually secure a better footing. They'd just be stressed and jumpy. I realized I couldn't move until I understood one thing. Why Alex? Why would he do this? He was MTech 003. He wasn't on the firing list. Was he being promoted? Was he getting a massive bonus? Was he being blackmailed? The answer to his motivation felt like the key to figuring out my next move. If he was being coerced, maybe I could appeal to his better nature. If he was doing it for a promotion, he was a lost cause, a cold-blooded betrayer. The rising emotional stakes were fueled by my proximity to him. Sitting 3 feet away from a man who had betrayed me and was actively conspiring against my colleagues was psychological torture. Every casual comment he made, every joke, every sigh, it all felt layered with deceit. One afternoon, Mr. Henderson stopped by our desks, which he almost never did. He stood there, hovering, and then pointed at a messy stack of papers on Alex's desk. "Alex, come see me in conference room C in 10 minutes. Bring your notes on the Q4 data review." I froze. Q4 data review. That was the rationale for the cuts, the poor performance data. I saw Alex nod calmly. "Sure thing, Mr. H." As Henderson walked away, I leaned over to Alex. "Q4 data? That's what we worked on last month. Is there a big problem?" Alex shot me a look that was part warning, part exhaustion. "Look, just a few things to tidy up. It's boring. Just focus on your API integration, okay? Leave the high-level stuff to me. Leave the high-level stuff to me." That simple phrase, usually a friendly way for him to take a burden off my plate, now sounded like a terrifying pronouncement. He was taking care of the high-level stuff, the firing of half our team, with me included. The tension was becoming unbearable. I was walking around the office with the biggest, heaviest secret in my backpack, pretending to care about software development while fighting an inner war about morality, betrayal, and self-preservation. I knew I couldn't keep this facade up for 2 whole weeks. The silence was becoming a lie, and the moral weight of that lie was starting to crush me. I had to find a way to act that protected me and maybe, just maybe, helped my friends, all while keeping Alex completely in the dark about what I knew. With the moral dilemma paralyzed by the fear of being exposed, my focus shifted to the one thing I could control without revealing my hand, gathering more intel on Alex. The betrayal was one thing, but the sheer logistical effort he was putting into this conspiracy was astonishing. I needed to understand his methodology, his movements, his ultimate goal. I turned into a corporate private investigator, and Alex's increasingly shady schedule became my case file. Remember those subtle red flags? The lateness, the secret meetings, the closed-door sessions with Mr. Henderson and Mr. Thorne? They weren't random. They were part of a precise, structured schedule. My goal was to track it. I started carrying a small notebook everywhere, pretending to jot down code notes, but really, I was logging Alex's movements with obsessive detail. The tracking routine. The first breakthrough came from observing his phone calls. Alex had always been an open-air phone talker. If he was on a personal call, he'd be leaning back in his chair, chatting loudly. But his professional calls, especially lately, were different. They were hushed, short, and always taken in transit. He would suddenly jump up, grab his phone, and hustle down the hallway to the deserted utility staircase, or even outside to the alleyway where people took smoke breaks. One afternoon, I pretended I was heading to the kitchen to refill my water bottle, timing my exit precisely as he hurried out for one of his calls. I hung back near the staircase, pressing my ear against the fire door. I couldn't make out the words, but I could hear the tone, serious, deferential, and ending with the phrase, "Yeah, I'll have the rest of the documentation ready for the review tomorrow, sir." He only called Mr. Thorne, sir. This wasn't just him doing a favor, this was a formal, structured arrangement. The other key part of his shady schedule was the phantom lunch breaks. Alex and I had a standing lunch ritual, the aforementioned terrible takeout noodles or maybe a sad prepackaged sandwich. About 3 times a week over the past month, he'd suddenly announce, gotta run a quick errand, and disappear for an hour and a half, sometimes more. When he came back, he'd look vaguely rumpled and tired, but also hyper-focused. One Tuesday, when he pulled his classic errand move, I decided to follow him. This was the stupidest, most paranoid thing I'd ever done. I put on my jacket, told our teammate Sarah I was going for a walk to clear my head, and tailed him discreetly from about 50 feet back. He didn't head for a normal lunch spot or a store. He walked straight toward a high-end corporate tower about 6 blocks away, a place where a major consulting firm, the kind that specializes in corporate restructuring, had offices. He went inside and didn't emerge until 90 minutes later. He came out with a slightly disheveled tie and a very expensive-looking leather folder. The consulting connection. That's when it clicked. Alex wasn't just talking to Mr. Henderson and Mr. Thorne, he was likely meeting with external consultants who were guiding the layoff process. This explained why he was so invaluable to the plan. He was the internal conduit, the guy giving the outside consultants the dirty details, the political landmines, and the on-the-ground support needed to justify the cuts. He was translating corporate strategy into real-world firing lists. When he returned to his desk, he started immediately deleting files. I mean, not just putting them in the trash, but doing those deep system deletes, using a specific software shortcut. I casually leaned over, pretending to stretch. "What are you deleting there, Alex?" "Cleaning house," I asked, keeping my voice light. He flinched. Seriously, a visible, full-body flinch. He quickly minimized the window. "Oh, just some old draft documents. Taking up space. You know, good system hygiene." His voice was unnaturally high. It wasn't system hygiene. It was the frantic, guilt-fueled attempt to erase the digital footprints of his side hustle. The more I tracked him, the more I understood the magnitude of his deception. He wasn't a victim being blackmailed. He was a highly compensated participant, dedicating a significant portion of his time to systematically dismantling the team we were both supposedly a part of. He was running a secret, secondary schedule designed to expedite the termination of his own friends. The realization was a turning point in my emotional response. The hurt started to transition into cold, strategic anger. This wasn't a friend making a mistake. This was a calculated, professional betrayal. And if Alex was playing a corporate game, I had to stop seeing him as my best friend and start treating him as what he was, my professional adversary. I was no longer just panicked. I was preparing for a counterattack. The tracking of Alex's mysterious movements had been helpful, turning my suspicion into a certainty that he was deeply involved. But I still lacked the smoking gun, the direct, undeniable link proving he was in cahoots with Mr. Henderson and Mr. Thorne about the layoffs. I needed to tie AC from the email to the physical, present Alex Chen. That moment came during a sudden, chaotic fire drill. It was mid-afternoon, and the air horn blared, startling everyone. In the open plan office, a fire drill is less about safety and more about a disorganized stampede for the exits. Alex, who was typically the first to sprint out the door, he once claimed he could smell smoke from a mile away, was oddly slow. He fumbled with his laptop bag and his notebook, clearly trying to secure them before leaving. Because of the rush, people were bumping into each other, and as he scrambled, his leather notebook, the expensive one he took to his phantom lunch meetings, slipped out of his grasp and skittered under his desk. He gave a frustrated sigh, but the flow of traffic was pushing him toward the exit. He had to choose between the crowd and the notebook. He chose the crowd, giving the notebook a quick, anxious glance before reluctantly joining the stream of people heading for the stairs. This was a tiny, 3-second window of opportunity. As soon as his back was turned and the stream of people cleared, I made my move. I dropped to my knees, pretending to tie my shoe, and reached under his desk. I snagged the notebook. It was heavy, leather-bound, and felt incredibly significant in my hands. I didn't have time to flip through the whole thing. I ducked into the nearest empty bathroom stall, my heart pounding, fully aware that this was probably the most ethically dubious thing I had done at work, but the betrayal trumped all protocol. I flipped quickly through the pages, mostly filled with dense technical notes and architecture diagrams that looked like they belonged to a high-level consultant, not a junior dev. Then I found it. Right near the back, on a page dated 2 weeks ago, was a handwritten calendar entry, standing out because it was circled and underlined in red ink. 2A Henderson/operator confirm. Surmit. My mind immediately flashed back to the confidential email I had accidentally opened. Confidential, Q4 restructuring draft Henderson/operator. And the italicized note at the end, confirming final details with AC tonight at 2 a.m. This wasn't just a meeting with Mr. Henderson. This was a 2 a.m. meeting with the manager and the VP of operations, the two key players in the layoff, explicitly referencing the project code from the confidential email. And it was dated the exact same night the email was sent, confirming the time mentioned in the text. The calendar entry was irrefutable. It was a tangible piece of evidence, written in Alex's recognizable scrawl, that he was the AC mentioned in the confidential email. He was having a secret, late-night meeting about the Q4 restructuring, with the two people orchestrating the firings. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a full-blown conspiracy, and Alex was its active participant. My hands were shaking, not just from the adrenaline of sneaking around, but from the emotional impact of the revelation. This wasn't something he could explain away as a coincidence or an innocent project. 2 a.m? A private, coded meeting? This was proof of premeditated, clandestine action. I quickly snapped a picture of the page with my phone, committing the photo to a secure folder I'd already created, then slipped the notebook back under his desk, checking that the coast was clear before casually exiting the restroom. I rejoined the flow of people returning from the fire drill, trying to slow my breathing and force a look of annoyed boredom onto my face. As I walked past Alex's desk, he was already there, frantically patting his pockets. He saw me and his eyes were wide with panic. Did you see my notebook? The brown leather one? It must have slipped out. I played dumb. Namit. Didn't see anything. Maybe check the stairwell landing. He visibly relaxed and immediately dropped to his knees to look under the desk. He pulled it out, clutched it to his chest, and let out a huge, relieved exhale. Phew. Close call. Thanks anyway. He had no idea. He thought he dodged a bullet. But that tiny, handwritten note, now safely stored on my phone, was the turning point. It had upgraded my status from a worried, paranoid employee to a person who held concrete evidence of a corporate betrayal, evidence that implicated my best friend. The rising drama was about to hit its peak, because now I didn't need to guess, I knew. And knowing meant the time for silence was over. I had the evidence, the calendar entry, the coded email, the suspicious absences. I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, what Alex was doing. But the hardest part wasn't the discovery, it was the confrontation. I couldn't just drop the bomb on him at his desk. I needed a private moment, a space where he couldn't hide, dodge, or run away. I also wanted to give him one last chance to be the friend I thought he was, to explain himself before I completely annihilated the 4 years we'd spent building our friendship. The opportunity came that evening. We had been planning to grab those greasy wings after work, our usual Thursday ritual. I almost canceled, feeling too sick with anger and dread to stomach it, but then I realized, this was the perfect setting. It was private, familiar, and outside the office walls. The atmosphere I was looking for was one of strained normalcy, designed to make his eventual lies even more obvious. When 5:30 p.m. rolled around, I walked over to his desk. Wings tonight? I asked, forcing a casual smile that felt like sandpaper on my face. Alex flinched a little, just the smallest hitch in his breath. Oh man, he said, rubbing the back of his neck, the same gesture he used when he was being vague about his secret meetings. Tonight's bad. I completely forgot. I have a thing. A family thing. A family thing. The lie was so smooth, so instantaneous. Just 2 weeks ago, a family thing would have been detailed, hilarious, or at least explained. Now it was a sudden, opaque shield. I decided to push him. I sat on the edge of the cube divider, leaning in. A family thing? You never have family things on a Thursday. Is it your sister's dog's birthday again? Come on, man, what's up? You've been ghosting me for weeks. You don't tell me anything anymore. Are we okay? I kept my voice gentle, bordering on concerned, But the underlying challenge was clear. This was my direct appeal, an olive branch offered just so he could slap it away. His whole demeanor changed. The casualness vanished, replaced by a defensive wall. His voice dropped, losing its usual playful edge. Dude, I told you. It's just a lot of pressure at work. I've got a ton on my plate. High-level stuff I can't really talk about, okay? It's confidential. I'm trying to manage this massive workload and you keep asking me if we're okay. Yeah, we're fine. I'm just busy. Why are you being so needy all of a sudden? Needy. That word stung more than the lie. It was a clear attempt to shift the blame and the focus onto my behavior, making me feel like the problem. I pushed back, my voice still quiet, but firm. I'm being needy because my best friend is avoiding me, lying about where he is during the day, and acting like I have the plague. If you're busy with high-level stuff, why can't you just tell me? We used to tell each other everything. Is this high-level stuff the reason you've been meeting with Henderson and Thorne behind closed doors all the time? I watched his face carefully. The mention of Thorne and Henderson made him go momentarily pale. It was a direct hit. He knew I was getting too close. He recovered quickly, putting on a show of genuine frustration. Look, I am meeting with them, okay? They're talking to me about potential mentorship opportunities. They're looking for younger talent to groom, and yeah, they asked me to keep it quiet for now. It's a huge opportunity, and you're making it sound shady. I'm doing this for my future. Can you just be happy for me instead of trying to make this about you? Mentorship. It was an almost plausible lie, corporate speak designed to sound important and unshareable. But I knew the truth. He wasn't being mentored, he was helping them clean house. So, mentorship requires you to sneak out of the office and take hushed phone calls in the alley? I countered. And why did you have to wait until now to tell me about it? I thought we were a team. It feels like you're actively hiding things that affect the whole team. Alex stood up, towering over me, his hands flat on his desk. This was the most tense, strained conversation we'd ever had. I'm not hiding anything. I'm trying to be professional. This is serious, and I don't need your paranoia right now. Just trust me. Everything's going to be fine. Just focus on your work, okay? Trust you? I echoed, the hurt finally cracking through the anger. You know what, Alex? Maybe I can't. Maybe I shouldn't. Something is seriously wrong, and you're treating me like an idiot. He let out a loud, exasperated sigh. Fine. If you want to believe I'm some secret corporate spy, go ahead. I can't stop you. But you're going to look pretty stupid when they announce my new project lead title in a few weeks. Now I have to go. I'm busy. He grabbed his bag and practically stomped out, leaving me sitting there, reeling. His final lie, the promise of a new project lead title, was the most direct callback to the 2-week time frame in the email. He was so confident in his deception, so committed to the narrative he was feeding me. But his angry, defensive reaction, his immediate use of blame-shifting tactics, confirmed everything. He was a liar and a deeply committed one. I walked out of the office that night, not for wings, but alone, clutching the knowledge that the friendship was already dead. The conversation hadn't been a reconciliation, it had been an autopsy. Now, I had to find the final nail for the coffin. The confrontation, or rather, the emotional ambush, with Alex in Section 9 had sealed it. The friendship was over. His defensive lies and the accusation that I was needy solidified my resolve. I was no longer interested in saving the relationship. I was focused on securing my future and exposing the truth. I needed one more piece of physical evidence, something direct and undeniable, before I could execute my final plan. The calendar entry was damning, but it was just a picture on my phone. I needed something tangible that linked him directly to a specific action related to the layoff. I spent the next 2 days working under a blanket of cold, calculated focus. Alex, still stewing from our argument, maintained his distance, which actually made my new surveillance routine easier. I was looking for anything unusual on his desk after he left for the day, not in his securely locked drawers, but out in the open, something he might have carelessly forgotten. It paid off on a late Tuesday evening. I was the last one left in our section, pretending to be deep in thought over a complex algorithm. Alex had rushed out earlier, presumably for another family thing or mentorship opportunity. His desk was usually messy, a chaotic mix of papers, empty coffee mugs, and tangled charging cables. But tonight, a few items stood out. Specifically, a brightly colored, square sticky note. A post-it, the kind we all used for quick reminders, was stuck to the side of his monitor. It was small, slightly crumpled, and written in hurried, messy handwriting that I instantly recognized as Alex's. The note was short, only 2 lines, but the words hit me with the force of a concrete hammer. Streamline 4, 9, 11, justify, low MTA utilization. My heart leaped into my throat. The numbers, 4, 9, 11. I instantly knew those numbers. 4, Tech 004, Sarah, the data analyst. 9, Tech 009, me, the developer. 11, Tech 011, Mark, the creative lead. Those were the 3 key people I had confirmed were on the Phase 1 personnel reductions list from the confidential email. This sticky note was the physical, tangible final confirmation, a to-do list for firing his friends. And the second line, justify, low MTA utilization. M meant marketing tech analytics, the tool Sarah used, that I helped develop, and that Mark designed graphics for. The note was a direct instruction to find a justification, a cover story, for why we were being fired, masking the true cost-cutting measure with a veneer of performance metrics. The excuse was that we were being eliminated because our specific tool, was underutilized, making our positions redundant. It was the corporate cruelty perfectly encapsulated on a tiny yellow square. This wasn't just proof of his involvement. This was proof of his active role in crafting the narrative to mask the firings. He wasn't just a messenger, he was co-authoring the justification for my professional demise. I quickly and carefully peeled the sticky note off the monitor, folding it twice, and slipping it into my wallet. It was slightly gross, slightly crumpled, but it was pristine evidence. I had the 4 essential pieces now. The email, the initial evidence, Tech 009. The calendar entry, proof of the 2 a.m. meeting with Henderson and Thorne, Henderson/OPRL confirm. The pattern, his weeks of lies and secret meetings. The sticky note, the final confirmation linking Alex directly to the coded list and the specific justification for our firing, Streamline 4, 9, 11. My strategy crystallized instantly. I was not going to play the hero and warn everyone. That was too risky. I was going to use this information to ensure that when I left on my own terms, with dignity, and with a small, private victory. I would leverage the evidence to secure the best possible outcome for myself. It was the only way to beat Alex at his own game. I logged off my computer for the last time that night, feeling a strange mixture of sorrow and empowerment. Sorrow for the broken friendship, and empowerment from the knowledge that I was now holding all the cards. Alex thought he was the insider, the power player. He had no idea that I had been watching him, tracking him, and collecting the very evidence that would neutralize his power over me. The time for the big reveal was imminent. The next morning, I arrived at the office not as a junior developer, but as a silent executioner. I had the complete file, the email, the calendar entry, the sticky note, all secured. I didn't warn anyone. I focused solely on the target, Alex. I needed him to know that I knew, but I needed the confrontation to serve my objective, a clean, dignified exit. I decided against a public spectacle that would only result in my immediate firing. I requested a private meeting with Mr. Henderson, something highly unusual, citing urgent concerns regarding Q4 project delivery and security protocols. Henderson, ever nervous, agreed to meet me in conference room C at 11 a.m. The plan was simple. I would present the evidence to Henderson first, proving my knowledge and his vulnerability. I would then demand a favorable exit package, severance, a non-disclosure agreement, and most importantly, a neutral professional reference, in exchange for my silence and the promise not to leak the layoff list or the identity of his internal consultant. But first, Alex. He needed to be the first domino to fall. Around 10:30 a.m., Just 30 minutes before my meeting with Henderson, I walked over to Alex's desk. He was hunched over his monitor, typing away, still maintaining that strained, distant facade. "Alex, can we step into the stairwell for 2 minutes?" "Now," I said, my voice completely flat. Not angry, not pleading, just a statement of fact. He sighed, annoyed. "I told you I'm really busy." "What is it?" "It's about Streamline 4, 9, 11, and your 2 a.m. meeting in conference room A. It's about your future and mine." He froze. His hands hovered over the keyboard. The casual dismissiveness vanished. He slowly swiveled his chair to face me, his face suddenly ash-gray. He knew. I had used the exact coded phrases. We walked into the empty stairwell. The silence was heavy, punctuated only by the low hum of the air conditioning. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just pulled out my phone and held it out, open to the photo of his calendar entry. 2 a.m. Henderson/Ogart'll confirm. See room A. Then I pulled out my wallet and using 2 fingers, carefully showed him the crumpled yellow sticky note. Streamline 4, 9, 11. Justify, low MTA utilization. I looked him straight in the eye. "Don't bother with the mentorship story, Alex. I saw the email. I know I'm MTech009, and I know you were the ISI helping Henderson and Thorne identify key redundancies. You were compiling the firing list, and you put my name on it." Alex's carefully constructed professional persona crumbled instantly. He looked like a deer caught in headlights, panicked and utterly exposed. He didn't try to lie. He didn't deny it. He just stammered, "Wait, how did you see that?" "Doesn't matter how. I saw it. I know everything. The secret meetings, the late hours, the ghosting. It wasn't pressure. It was a betrayal. The dam broke." He didn't apologize. He started defending himself with a torrent of excuses. "You don't understand the pressure I was under. They pulled me aside a month ago. They said the cuts were happening regardless, and they needed an internal voice to make sure they weren't cutting the absolutely essential people. They were going to fire half the team anyway. This wasn't about me getting you fired. This was about me trying to save the people who matter most, and trying to secure my position so I could eventually help others. By listing your best friend as redundant and inventing a fake performance justification? I cut in, my voice laced with steel. By accepting a consulting gig that paid you to throw your friends under the bus? You put Sarah on that list, Alex. You put Mark on that list. And you put me on that list. You weaponized our friendship. You used everything I told you, all my anxieties, all my complaints about projects, to justify my termination." He finally looked down, defeated. "They offered me the associate director role and a massive bonus if the restructuring went smoothly. I told myself I was doing it for the stability. I was going to use the power to build a better team after the cuts. I'm so sorry, man. I was going to warn you eventually. I swear." The twist wasn't just that he was the informant, it was his chillingly corporate, calculated justification. He wasn't a monster, he was a terrified, ambitious friend who made a terrible, selfish choice under pressure, convinced he was playing the long game. But the long game involved sacrificing my career and my trust. His apology was too little, too late, and too centered on his own ambition. "You don't get to warn me, Alex." I found out. "That's the difference," I said, my voice a mere whisper of finality. "Now, listen to me. I have a meeting with Mr. Henderson in 20 minutes. He doesn't know I know, and he certainly doesn't know you and I are standing here right now. I have enough evidence to expose the entire layoff plan, reveal you as the corporate mole, and cause a huge internal scandal that could ruin both of your careers. You are going to go back to your desk, you are going to be silent, and you are going to let me handle this. Understand?" He nodded slowly, defeated. The great corporate conspirator was reduced to a frightened former friend. The betrayal was complete, but now I had the power to control the resolution. I left Alex in the stairwell, a picture of pathetic, self-inflicted misery, and walked straight to conference room C. I didn't look back. The hurt was still there, a dull ache, but it was overshadowed by a singular, intense focus, my exit strategy. Mr. Henderson was waiting, shuffling papers nervously. He looked up, his face etched with confusion. Come in. What's this about urgent security concerns? He asked, already stressed. I didn't sit down. I stood at the end of the long conference table, making him look up at me. I maintained eye contact, a level of confidence he had never seen from me. Mr. Henderson, I began, my voice quiet and steady, I know about the Q4 restructuring. I know about the Phase 1 personnel reductions. And I know I am MTech 009 on that list. The blood drained from his face. His jaw literally dropped. The papers he was holding slipped slightly in his hands. He tried to recover, stammering, I don't know what you're talking about. That's highly confidential and... I cut him off, holding up my phone with the picture of Alex's calendar entry displayed. I know about the 2 a.m. meeting with you and Mr. Thorne. I know the consultant you brought in was Alex Chen, and that he's the C, helping you justify redundancies like low MT utilization for me, Mark, and Sarah. I paused, letting the words hang in the air like a physical threat. I also have the original document that lists the full code names for Phase 1. His defenses collapsed completely. The fear was palpable. Henderson's biggest concern wasn't the firings, it was the scandal. An internal leak of this magnitude would be disastrous for him and the VP of Operations. It would signal incompetence and could trigger legal action, mass resignations, and terrible PR just before the official announcement. I leaned forward, presenting my terms, completely bypassing the messy emotional side of the betrayal. This was a negotiation, not a plea. I am not here to report this to HR or leak it to the press. I am here to negotiate my severance. Henderson swallowed hard. What are your terms? Simple, I stated. I will sign a rock-solid non-disclosure agreement. I won't tell Mark, Sarah, or anyone else about the list, the timing, or Alex's involvement, in exchange for 3 things. First, a severance package equal to 6 months' salary, paid immediately. Second, a guaranteed, neutral, and positive professional reference from you and Mr. Thorne. Third, and non-negotiable, my departure must be effective immediately, labeled as a voluntary resignation with a clear, positive internal memo thanking me for my years of service. I will not have redundancy on my record. Henderson looked like he was fighting a losing battle with his own sweat glands. The cost of my severance was nothing compared to the corporate firestorm I could ignite. He frantically pulled out his phone and made a hushed, panicked call to Mr. Thorne, speaking in corporate whispers about a sensitive, unexpected complication and immediate damage control. 10 minutes later, he hung up, defeated. Mr. Thorne agrees to the terms. We will process the paperwork this afternoon. I nodded once, a small, cold sense of satisfaction washing over me. Good. I'll expect the transfer confirmation before 5 p.m. today. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to clean out my desk. I walked out of the conference room and headed straight for my cubicle. Alex was there, hunched over, watching me approach with wide, miserable eyes. I calmly cleared my desk, the few personal photos, my favorite mug, a stack of sticky notes, minus the crucial yellow one. I stopped at the cubicle wall separating us. He looked up, his voice barely a rasp. Did you tell him? I just looked at him, not with anger, but with complete finality. I secured my severance, Alex. I'm leaving now on my own terms. I didn't tell him about you. That betrayal is something you have to carry, not me. I paused for one final, devastating blow. You played a selfish, calculated game to get ahead, and you sacrificed our 4 years of friendship for a promotion that hasn't even happened yet. I used one accidental click to save my future, expose your plan, and walk out with 6 months of salary. You're still here, still cleaning up their mess, still lying, and still sitting on a list of people you betrayed. Who do you think really won the corporate game, Alex? I didn't wait for his answer. I grabbed my box, walked past the surprised faces of Mark and Sarah, and left Innovate Solutions forever. The resolution wasn't a Hollywood ending. Mark and Sarah were still fired 2 weeks later, just as planned, but I had enough leverage to jump straight into a new, better job quickly, using my severance to take a much-needed mental break. I never spoke to Alex again. The lasting question isn't about the job or the money, but about the true cost of ambition. How much are you willing to sacrifice, and who are you willing to lose to get ahead? I learned that in the corporate world, sometimes the biggest threat isn't the manager or the company, but the person sitting right next to you.